Soul City Church, how are we doing this morning? Good to see you all. Good to see you, Joel and Kate. Thanks for driving all the way down. Good to see you. My name's Jarrett. I'm one of the lead pastors here. My wife, Jeannie, and I had the privilege of starting this church with an amazing team of people. We get to lead this church with an amazing team of people. So I'm just so glad that you are here. Whether you're here in person, you braved the rain. Look at you. You are overcomers. You're here today, or whether you are with us worshiping online, we're so glad that you carved out this time to explore or maybe grow in a relationship with God. That's super important. We are in a teaching series, as Fabi mentioned, called You're Welcome. And the whole idea behind this is we want to explore what it means to live a more invitational life. How can we be a more invitational church so that we're constantly looking for opportunities to invite people into life with Jesus? So that's where we're going. We're right in the middle of that series, continuing that today. A moment ago, Fabi had everyone share the most famous person. There's some great conversations going around. Most famous person you met. I heard someone say John Jorgensen, and I was like, well, that's good for him. That's awesome. He is taller in person than he seems on the screen, I can tell you that. I haven't had a ton that I've met, but I have had a few, and I'd like to think that the few celebrities that I've met were pretty legit. One of them was right here in this neighborhood. This was years ago. Jeannie and I were on a breakfast date at Little Goat Cafe, which used to be right here in our neighborhood. And I look across like 3 tables over, and there's the actor David Schwimmer from Friends, Ross from Friends. And he lived in the neighborhood for a while. And so I said to Jeannie, I'm like, babe, be cool. But Ross is right next to us. And I want to demonstrate to you in exact real time what my wife did. She looked over and saw him, went back to her purse and pulled out her lipstick and put her lipstick on. What was the plan, babe? Where were you? What was the plan? Why did Ross get lip gloss and I didn't? I don't understand. I did not say hi to him that day. I've shared this story probably way too many times, but Jeannie and I had the privilege through our friend Eric, who used to be part of this church. We got to meet the queen herself, Beyonce, right before a concert. And yeah, I mean, what can you say about Bey? Like, it was incredible. And here's the best part. She said to Jeannie when Jeannie walked up, "You look beautiful." And I'm like, I'm out. I'm done. And of course, we gave her a Soul City coffee mug because we just gave them to everyone then. And so we gave her and I like to imagine that her and Jay in the morning when they get up, making their little pour over, the first mug they go for is the Soul City mug, because I like to think they think about me as much as I think about them. And then recently, just this last year, we had the privilege of our whole family got to spend time with Mariah Carey here in Chicago right before her concert, and that's really her. I know it looks like a cardboard cutout. We have to tell everyone all the time. It's actually really her. And Jeannie actually got invited to give her like a little 3-minute sermon before her concert, and so Jeannie preached to her, and then we all got to hold hands and pray for her. Come on, how fun is that? And we also brought a mug. Because we always bring a mug. But this is the best part. As we were going to hand it to her, a security guy just cut me off and grabbed it and took it right over to the other side of the room, where I'm sure she uses it to this very day. We've all probably had celebrity sightings. We've all just talked about those encounters with people. And while it can be fun, let's be honest, they're fleeting. It's not like you built a deep relationship with that person in the 30 seconds that you said hello to them. They just last for a moment, typically. But I want you to imagine that person, that celebrity, that most famous person you've met, if after meeting them and after you telling them your name and how you're a big fan and taking your selfie, imagine if they said to you, hey, Jarrett, hey, I got some downtime right now. What do you got going on? How about I come over to your place and hang out? Would it be cool if I just had dinner with you? How would you respond if they said that to you? How would you respond if whoever that most famous person is said, hey, can I just come chill at your place for a little while today? Can I just hang out with you? Do you think maybe you might want to straighten up before they come over? Do you think maybe those dishes that have been in the sink a little too long might get washed? Or those clothes that need to be folded for the last 5 days get taken off your bed and thrown into the closet at least? Like, do you think you might straighten up a little bit before they came over? Like if Mariah Carey said to us at the concert, hey, as soon as I'm done tonight, I would love to come to your house for dessert. You better believe one of us would have left straight from that concert, and Jeannie would not trust me to do it, so she would leave straight from that concert and go clean up our house and probably stop at Crate and Barrel along the way and get all new stemware, glassware, all new silverware, plates, everything. The whole table would be set for her. We would definitely, we would make sure that our house looked like this. Like all nice and neat and perfect and everything at the best it could be. If I knew that she was coming over to my house, I would make sure that I had it looking the best versus what sometimes it can look like was just a mess. Sometimes we have our best and sometimes we have a mess. And I imagine that if that person were coming to your house, you would want to offer your best, correct? You would want to make sure that was set out. Okay, so here's what I want you to do. I want you to think about them coming over to your house and how you would act, how you would think. Do you think you would act differently than you treat your friends when they come over for game night? Probably, right? You'd probably treat them a little different. So since we're at church, I want to take this to the next level. I want to ask you to just play along with me. I want you to think about this. I want you to think about what you would do if Jesus was coming to visit you. Yeah, think about what you would do. I know this is a crazy scenario, but I just want you to imagine it for a moment. That Jesus was coming to visit you. What would you do? Imagine that for after 2,000 years, Jesus, the Son of God, comes down from heaven, and the first place he wants to go is your apartment. For some reason, he wants to go to your house. And the first meal he wants to have is, of course, Chick-fil-A at your house. It's Jesus chicken. Of course he wants it at your. What would you do if Jesus was coming to visit you? What would you do different? How would you treat him differently than you might treat me or Greg from accounting if we came over to your house? My hunch is you would set the table. You would make sure that you had your best out because you probably some level believe that is what Jesus deserves. Well, I want you to hold on to that thought because that's exactly what's at the heart of the passage that we're going to unpack together over the next few moments. And to do that, I'm going to ask you to grab a Bible and turn to Matthew 25. So if you have a Bible with you or you have it on an app, great. You see lots of people bending over to grab one of these. If you're new around here, this is a Soul City Bible. That same Bible just got our sticker on the front. You can grab that and turn to page 807, page 807. If you don't own a Bible, don't happen to have one, you can just take this Bible home with you today, steal a Bible from church. Matthew 25, page 807. Let me give you some quick context because there's a lot to unpack about this passage. So Jesus is on like a teaching tear in Matthew 25, and he's painting these pictures of what life with God is like in the kingdom of God here on earth, like how we are to live differently. And he tells these three different stories in Matthew 25 to illustrate the importance of our choices, how the choices we make matter, not only to us, but to others, not only here, but for eternity as well. And so we're going to jump down to the middle of the third story. Jesus is telling a story about how one day God will sort of look at all that we've done and determine, did we choose to live our lives with him in this world? And we'll all have to give an account for our one and only life. And so Jesus is in the middle of that story, and he says this in Matthew 25, verse 34. He says this, "Then the king will say to those on his right, 'Come, you who are blessed by my Father, take your inheritance, the kingdom prepared for you since the creation of the world.'" Again, Jesus is speaking about those who really get it in this world. And here's how we get that they got it. He goes on to say this, "For I was" what? What's the next word? "For I was hungry and you gave me something to eat. I was, and you gave me something to drink. I was and you invited me in. I needed, and you clothed me. I was, and you looked after me. I was in, and you came to visit me." Now, there's a lot going on right now. You can imagine for those who are listening to this teaching for the very first time, who are with Jesus in that moment, you can imagine that they could see him, they could definitely hear him, but they couldn't be necessarily so close to him because at this point, there's a couple thousand people that were following Jesus, give or take, around during this moment. And so you can imagine if you were one of those people, you're like, wait a second, how am I supposed to do that for him? How am I supposed to do something as intimate or significant as feeding Jesus or clothing Jesus or caring for Jesus, all these other people? How can we possibly do any of that for him? And besides, I don't think he's gone to jail. Like if he has, we should talk about that. And he seems fairly clothed to me. So you can imagine maybe a little confusion around this teaching. And so Jesus speaks right to that. Verse 37, he says, well, here's what you're going to say. Then the righteous will answer him, well, Lord, wait, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink? When did we see you a stranger and invite you in, or needing clothes and clothe you? When did we see you sick or in prison and come to visit you? Wait, when did we do that for you? And this is what Jesus says, and this is what I don't want you to miss. The king will reply, truly I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers or sisters of mine, you did it for who? You did it for me. Whatever you did for them, you did to me, for me. whatever it was, however it was that you loved, served, came alongside others, you weren't just coming alongside them, you were coming alongside me. That person that you walked past on the sidewalk on your way to work, Jesus is there. That friend you have, that the family member you have that is wrestling with addiction, and the time and the prayer that you've spent, the energy that you've tried to support and come around them, Jesus is in that. He's there. That those kids at that orphanage that you went to that one time on that church trip, Jesus was there. Jesus says anytime you love and serve and come alongside others, you're actually doing it to me. And he goes on to finish this teaching by saying that those who fail to share their lives in this way, those who fail to share their lives with those who can never repay them, that they have completely missed the point of what our life with God is like in this world. Even those who claim to be religious, or those who claim to have all the answers, or those who have perfect church attendance, if you do not show love to others in this kind of way, then you clearly must not know Jesus. Whew, that's a lot. So what is Jesus, this unbelievable passage, this paradigm kind of shifting passage of how we look at and interact with others, what does he want us to know? What does he want you to do? I'm so glad you didn't ask, because I want to show you, I want to tell you anyway. I'm going to tell you anyway. And to do that, what I want to do is I'm going to ask you to raise your hands here in a moment. If you are someone who really loves throwing parties, raise your hand and keep it up. If you love throwing parties, go ahead. If you love having people over for dinner, you love making the dinner, you love having folks, keep your hands up nice and high. You love all of it, just creating all of the moment. Okay, keep your hands up. Everyone else, look around the room right now. These are your new best friends. Get their name and contact info. We're going to their house after church today. They told us they want to do this. All right? Well, some of you know my wife Jeannie is the queen of hospitality. So much of the spirit of hospitality at this church comes from the hospitality gift that Jeannie has, making people feel welcome. And our daughter Gigi, our 16-year-old daughter, has it just like her mother. They love throwing parties. And the two of them, they love coming up with the recipe, and they love putting the menu together, and they love creating the atmosphere, from the candles to the flowers to everything set just perfectly, all the thoughtful little touches that they love to lay out. And they're almost always, both of them will have some sort of intentional question written on the napkin, or some sort of intentional moment that we're supposed to have during the meal. They live on this side of the table. Me and Elijah, I mean, we're like in this region, kind of. Like we're in the, you should be glad we put the goldfish in a bowl kind of region. It's where we live, so not quite the same, not quite the same. And you know how it feels when you go over to someone's house, or when you have a meal with someone who really has that kind of gift. All those people just raise their hand of making people feel welcomed and wanted. It's a powerful thing, isn't it? Like you feel so loved, don't you, when you're with them, even through a meal or through someone just hosting the time together at their house. You can feel so loved through that expression of hospitality. Well, I believe what Jesus is inviting us into in Matthew 25 is a form of hospitality that I'll call holistic hospitality. Holistic hospitality. What does that mean? It means sharing what you have with what others need. It's just simply sharing whatever it is you have with whatever it is that someone else may need. And the idea here is as practical as it is powerful. You share your life with others by sharing what you have with what others may need. And sometimes that does mean making a meal, having people over, opening up your home. Absolutely, that is definitely a way to express that kind of love and hospitality. Sometimes it does involve a physical space. But it can also include sharing your presence with someone who's lonely. And rather than just sort of like sending a text like, hey, hope you're cool, what would it look like for you to create an exquisite space of care and presence for them? To let them know that you are with them even in this season. What it can look like is not just sharing a physical space. It can look holistic. Hospitality can look like sharing your tears with someone who's hurting. And it's real easy just to send a text or, hey, praying for you. But for those of us who've lost someone or lost a dream or had a marriage come to an end, and the people that stood with you through that, you will never forget them, will you? Because they shared tears with you. They didn't just send you a cheap little like, oh, it'll all be better. This is all part of God's plan. No, they cried with you. They held that space with you. Holistic hospitality looks like sharing your resources with someone who may be in financial need. It can look like actually praying for someone who is wrestling with God and consistently praying for them. Not just like, hey, yeah, bro, I got you. I'll pray for you, bro. But I'm praying with you. I am in your corner advocating for you as you wrestle through this season with life or with God. That's what holistic hospitality looks like. I take what I have to others who are in need. It's not just about opening up your home. It's about opening up your life to others, to whoever may need it. Does that make sense? And I think what's so beautiful about thinking of it in this way of holistic hospitality, coming out of Matthew 25, is this. Holistic hospitality actually allows you, this is great, actually allows you to be both like Jesus as you serve and with Jesus whom you're serving. Isn't that cool? So you get to be like Jesus, the ultimate example of a servant to us. And as you are serving or come alongside the needs of others, you are actually going to be with Jesus. That's what he says. When you are serving and loving and caring for others that way, you are doing that to me. So you get to be with him even as you are doing the best you can to be like him. Because what was it Jesus said? What was it? When I was hungry, you gave me something to eat. When I needed clothes, you clothed me. When I was sick, you cared for me. Whatever you did for one of these brothers or sisters, you did it for who? You did it to me. And I believe that in our culture today, I think this is one of the greatest ways to share Jesus with others, is by this kind of idea of holistic hospitality. Just holistically serving however the best you can, to do what you can with what you have for others in need. Few things, I believe, in our world today demonstrate the love of Jesus more than that. But it hasn't always been this way. Like some of you don't know because maybe you're kind of new to church, you're just coming around, but I'm looking for those who are a little bit older, who've been around church for a while. I'm looking in this direction. Been around church for a while. You know that back in the day, like when I grew up in church, that wasn't the way that we tried to share Jesus with people. We were taught, I was taught at least, that the idea was what you had to do was convince people to follow Jesus. You had to break down all their defenses and eradicate all their arguments and convince them that they would ultimately believe in Jesus if you could just convince them. And there were all kinds of classes and programs and ways to try and convince people about Jesus. And one of the ways we did that was through these little tiny comic book little things called tracts. I don't know if anyone here has ever heard of tracts. Okay. That's a real one. No, that's real. Yep. Now, I just want to say, now, can we just pause for a second? I just want to name that I believe that the people in the brainstorming meeting that came up with this idea of these little tiny books called tracts, I genuinely believe they had good intentions. I think they just wanted to help people find and follow Jesus. The intention was good. The execution got off the rails sometimes because all of them were like obsessed with the mark of the beast and cults and D&D and witchcraft and sex and drugs and rock and roll and especially Halloween. There was a lot of them on the dangers of Halloween. And so I grew up so scared of Halloween because that's the devil's day. And this is to just convince you that if you just, could read this, then maybe you'd be convinced enough to immediately after reading this tiny little micro book, give your life to Jesus right there in that moment. I believe the intention was good. However, this next one, I do not believe they had a good intention. I don't even think they knew Jesus when they made this because this one is a real thing that people would give to people. After having a meal, they would leave their server a $5 tip on the table. And so when the server would go to grab that tip, they would pick it up and find out what it actually was this. Disappointed? Satan also deceives, but Jesus saves. What? That's real. Who here has ever been a server before? Yeah, I have. How would that make you feel if that's what they left you? You'd probably fall on your knees and worship Jesus right there in that moment. And Christians wonder why people hate us. We did it to ourselves. So the big idea behind all of those things was just convince people or make them mad enough. And that would be enough. You just got to convince them to know what you know so that they would believe. That's just not how it works in our world today. Why? Because I just fundamentally believe that people don't care what you know until they know that you care. They don't care how many verses you have memorized, how many answers to life's biggest questions. That's wonderful, that's great. But they don't care what you know until they know that you care about them. As they are, who they are. That you care about them now, here and now. People care far more that you care about them than they care about you being able to convince them about Jesus. And I'm not saying, please hear me, I'm not saying that having answers to big spiritual questions doesn't matter. I believe it does. What I'm saying is that people matter more than that. People matter more than that. This is why I am so committed to Alpha. That's why I love, and for those of you who've been a part of Alpha, you already know that's the heart of Alpha, is we create a space for us to ask our biggest spiritual questions. But get this, it's not done through a sermon like this. It's not done through a filling out a form. No, it's done around a table in the context of community and conversation where we share a meal together and we actually get to care for each other as we ask our big spiritual questions. It was so fun to kick Alpha off last Tuesday night, and I'm a shameless plug here, not even in the notes. If you are not a part of Alpha and you have some big spiritual questions, and you're looking for a space where you can be seen and cared for as you wrestle with this, please join me Tuesday night. You can come sit. I'm at table 1. You can come sit with me. I would love to have you here at Alpha. Doesn't matter what your background is, you are welcome to come to the table because we care about you. And we care about the questions you have and the things going on in your world. So I wonder for you right now, if you were to think about your life and your world, who it might be for you that may be wondering right now if God even cares about them. Wondering if anyone maybe cares about them or their needs. There's something going on in their life and they're just wondering, does anyone care? How can you actually this week, how can you let them know that God does care for them by how you care for them this week? In other words, and this is what I've just found to be true in the days that we live in, showing how you care shows them how much God cares. Showing how you care for them, for their needs, for whatever it may be. It could be physical, spiritual, mental, emotional, relational, financial, I don't know. But when you show that you care about that, you are actually showing how much God cares for them. Are there people in your world right now, maybe that God is bringing to your heart and mind? Maybe it's someone in your family, maybe it's a friend that you have that you just know is maybe struggling, there's some real need that they have. How can you thoughtfully and tangibly create space for them this week? What would that look like? I'll never forget, and I've talked about it here before, the season when within the span of 6 months, my brother Scott died and my dad died, and it was right at the beginning of COVID, and it was just a really, really, really hard time, period. And I will never forget the people who came and created a space for me. They sat with me, they cried with me. People from this church, they cared for me by just being with me. They didn't give me cheap little answers and, oh, here's this little thing, this little rhymy thing that's gonna help you. Remember, they just sat with me and held space for me for as long as it took for me to grieve those losses. And I don't know if they saw Jesus in me, but I'm telling you, I saw Jesus in them. I saw how God cares for me by how they cared for me. So who is it for you? How can you show this kind of holistic hospitality this week by sharing whatever it is you have with whatever it is that they may actually need? And what if you actually committed yourself to doing that this week? You never know. By doing that, you may actually give them the greatest sermon they've ever heard on Jesus by how you demonstrate and serve like Jesus as you're actually serving Jesus. And I can't think of a better moment and a better time and a better space for us to just pause and come back again to how Jesus is the ultimate example, how he always goes first for us. And so what I want us to do is just for the next couple of moments, we're actually gonna go to a table together. We're gonna go to a table where Jesus gathered his friends and followers and they shared their last meal together. And so I'm gonna ask our amazing host team to come forward now, and they're gonna pass out elements. They're gonna give you a little cup and they're gonna give you a little piece of gluten-free bread, And so you can make sure that you get that. And all I'm gonna ask you to do is just hold it. So hold the bread, hold the cup, pick the cups up lightly. They do tend to break and shoot juice everywhere. So just make sure you are aware. Hold the bread and hold the cup. Because what's so powerful about this moment in the life of Jesus, and what's so powerful about this tradition that we've carried now for 2,000 years, is that Jesus could have just said a bunch of stuff to them before he left. But no, what did he do? He created a space. He made a table for them. He literally set an intentional space to demonstrate, to show them just how much he loves us. And in fact, Jesus said, I'm gonna give you my body. When he broke the bread, he said, this bread's like think of it as my body that's gonna be given to you, broken for you. I'm giving all that I have for every need that you have. And he poured the wine and he said, every time you see this, I want you to think of this as actually not just wine, but my blood poured out for you, the only thing that can fully cover all of our sin, to free us and forgive us, liberate our lives. Jesus said, I'm giving all that I have, all of me, my body, my blood, to meet your greatest need. What a powerful picture we have around that table with Jesus today. And so I'm gonna ask you just to hold these elements. I'm gonna give you a little pause, just a little space in your life, in your week right now, to just pause and reflect on how much Jesus has done for you. And just sit with that, and I'll come back in a moment and lead us through taking these elements together.
How deep the Father's love for us, how vast beyond all measure, that he should give his only Son to make a wretch his treasure. How great the pain of searing loss, the Father turns his face away, as wounds which mar the chosen one bring many sons to glory. Behold the man upon a cross, my sin upon his shoulders. Ashamed, I hear my mocking voice call out among the scoffers. It was my sin that held him there until it was accomplished. His dying breath has brought me life. I know that it is finished. I will not boast in anything, no gifts, no power, no wisdom, but I will boast in Jesus Christ, his death and resurrection. What should I gain from his reward? I cannot give an answer, but this I know with all my heart: his wounds have paid my ransom.
The Bible tells us on the night that Jesus would ultimately be betrayed by one of his closest friends and followers, the night before the trial, the mock trial that would ultimately lead to his crucifixion and eventually his resurrection, being raised by God from the dead, he just created a space in a moment that he didn't want his followers to miss. He went first. He demonstrated what it looks like to give of yourself for the sake of others. And Jesus said, when he broke the bread, "This is my body broken for you. Take this in remembrance of me." So let's take the bread together. In the same way, Jesus took a cup and he said, "This wine is to remind you of my blood," which is really the seal, the new covenant, the new agreement, that you can be made new in God because of my death and resurrection. And I pour it out fully and freely for all. So let's take the cup in remembrance of Jesus. I'm gonna ask if you're able to, if you'd stand right now. We're gonna close in a time of prayer. You could hold on to your cup and you can get rid of that when you leave today. But if we just take a moment to pray that God would really enable us to do what we've heard today. God, we thank you that whether we realize it or not, you created this space for us today. You set a table for us to come and experience you and to hear from you, to see how much you care about each of us, every one of our needs. And so God, I pray that you would enable us now this week to do the same, that we would not just be hearers of this, but we'd be doers of it. That we would today text, we'd set up coffee, we'd reach out right now today with people that we know that we can come alongside, we can serve, we can love, and in so doing, demonstrate just how much you love them. God, would you give us creativity? Would you give us courage and follow through to see you in a new light as we do? And again, we thank you, Jesus, that you are the one who did it all. Thank you for how you sacrificed and gave of yourself so that we could have life. We're just trying to follow your example as best we can. We love you and we're so grateful. It's in your name that we pray. Amen.